Nintendo DS.
The Nintendo DS is a dual-screen handheld game console developed and released by Nintendo. The device went on sale in North America on November 21, 2004. The DS, short for Developer's System, or dual screen, introduced distinctive new features to handheld gaming: two LCD screens working in tandem, a built-in microphone, and support for wireless connectivity. Both screens are encompassed within a clamshell design similar to the Game Boy Advance SP. The Nintendo DS also features the ability for multiple DS consoles to directly interact with each other over Wi-Fi within a short range without the need to connect to an existing wireless network. Alternatively, they can interact online using the Nintendo Wi-Fi connection service. Prior to its release, the Nintendo DS was marketed as a third pillar in Nintendo's console lineup, meant to complement the Game Boy Advance and GameCube. However, backward compatibility with Game Boy Advance titles and strong sales ultimately established the new handheld console as the successor to the Game Boy series. On March 2, 2006, Nintendo launched a Nintendo DS Lite, a slimmer and lighter redesign of the original Nintendo DS with brighter screens. On November 1, 2008, Nintendo released the Nintendo Dsai, another redesign with several hardware improvements and new features. As of December 31, 2013, all Nintendo DS models combined have sold 153.98 million units, making it the best-selling handheld game console to date, and the second best-selling video game console of all time.
History. Development.
On November 13, 2003, Nintendo announced that they would be releasing a new game product in 2004. The company didn't provide many details, but stated it would not succeed the Game Boy Advance or GameCube. On January 20, 2004, the console was announced under the codename Nintendo DS, which initially stood for Developer's System. Nintendo only released a few details at that time, saying that the console would have two separate 3-inch TFT LCD display panels, separate processors, and up to 1 gigabit of semiconductor memory. Nintendo President Satoru Iwata said, "We have developed Nintendo DS based upon a completely different concept from existing game devices in order to provide players with a unique entertainment experience for the 21st century." He also expressed optimism that the DS would help put Nintendo back at the forefront of innovation and move away from the conservative image that has been described about the company in years past. In March 2004, the codename was changed to Nitro, and a document containing most of the console's technical specifications was leaked. In May 2004, the codename was changed back to Nintendo DS, and the console was shown in prototype form at the Electronic Entertainment Expo, E3. All the features of the console were revealed by Nintendo at E3. On July 28, 2004, Nintendo revealed a new design, one that was described as sleeker and more elegant than the one shown at E3. Also, the codename Nintendo DS became the official name of the console that day.
Launch.
On September 20, 2004, Nintendo announced that the Nintendo DS would be released in North America on November 21, 2004 for $149.99. It was set to release on December 2, 2004 in Japan, $15,000. On February 24, 2005 in Australia, $199.95. And on March 11, 2005 in Europe, PS 99.99/EU $149.99. The console was released in North America with a midnight launch event at Universal City Walk EB Games in Los Angeles, California. The console was launched quietly in Japan compared to the North America launch. One source cites the cold weather as the reason. Regarding the European launch, Nintendo President Satoru Iwata said,
Promotion.
The system's promotional slogans revolve around the word touch in almost all countries, with the North American slogan being "Touching is good." The Nintendo DS was seen by many analysts to be in the same market as Sony's PlayStation Portable, although representatives from both companies have said that each system targets a different audience. At the time of its release in the United States, the Nintendo DS retailed for $149.99. The price dropped to $129.99 on August 21, 2005, one day before the anticipated North American releases of Nintendogs and Advance Wars, Dual Strike. At one point, Time magazine awarded the DS a Gadget of the Week award. 9 official colors of the Nintendo DS were available through standard retailers. Titanium, silver and black were available worldwide. Electric blue was exclusive to North and Latin America. There was also a red version of the DS which was bundled with the game Mario Kart DS. Graphite black, pure white, turquoise blue, and candy pink were available in Japan. Mystic pink and cosmic blue were available in Australia and New Zealand. Japan's candy pink and Australia's cosmic blue were also available in Europe and North America through a Nintendogs bundle, although the colors are just referred to as pink and blue. However, these colors were only available for the original-style Nintendo DS. A different and more limited set of colors have been used for the Nintendo DS Lite.
Reception.
As of December 31, 2013, all Nintendo DS models combined have sold 153.98 million units, making it the best-selling handheld game console to date, and the second best-selling video game console of all time.
Legacy.
The success of the DS paved the way for its successor, the Nintendo 3DS, a handheld gaming console with a similar dual-screen setup. It can display images on the top screen in a three-dimensional look. On January 29, 2014, Nintendo announced that Nintendo DS games would be added to the Wii U Virtual Console.
Games. Compatibility.
The Nintendo DS is backward compatible with Game Boy Advance, GBA, cartridges. The smaller Nintendo DS game cards fit into a slot on the top of the system, while Game Boy Advance games fit into a slot on the bottom of the system. The Nintendo DS is not backward compatible with games for the Game Boy Color and the original Game Boy. The Sharp Z80 compatible processor used in the older systems is still included, and indeed necessary for some GBA games that use the older sound hardware. The handheld does not have a port for the Game Boy Advance link cable, so multiplayer or GameCube Game Boy Advance link-up modes are not available in Game Boy Advance titles. Only single-player mode is supported on the Nintendo DS. The Nintendo DS only uses one screen when playing Game Boy Advance games. The user can configure the system to use either the top or bottom screen by default. The games are displayed within a black border on the screen. Due to the slightly different screen resolution between the two systems, 256x192px, approximately 0.05 megapixels, for the Nintendo DS, and 240x160px, approximately 0.04 megapixels, for the Game Boy Advance. Nintendo DS games inserted into the top slot are able to detect the presence of specific Game Boy Advance games in the bottom slot. In many such games either stated in the game during gameplay or mostly explained in the game's instruction manuals, extra content can be unlocked or added by starting the Nintendo DS game with the appropriate Game Boy Advance game inserted. Some of the content can stay permanently, even when the GBA game has been removed after content has been added. Additionally, GBA slot can be used to house expansion packs, such as the Rumble Pack, the Nintendo DS Memory Expansion Pack, and the Guitar Grip for the Guitar Hero On Tour series. The Nintendo Tsai and the Tsai XL do not have a second cartridge slot and cannot play Game Boy Advance games.
Regional division.
The Nintendo DS is region-free in the sense that any console will run a Nintendo DS game purchased anywhere in the world. However, the Chinese version games can only be played on the Chinese IKDS, whose larger firmware chip contains the required Chinese character glyph images. Although the Nintendo DS of other regions cannot play the Chinese games, the IKDS can play games of other regions. Also, as with Game Boy games, some games that require both players to have a Nintendo DS game card for multiplayer play will not necessarily work together if the games are from different regions. For example, a Japanese Nintendo DS game may not work with a North American Nintendo DS game, even though some titles, such as Mario Kart DS and Pokémon Diamond and Pearl versions, are mutually compatible. With the addition of the Nintendo Wi-Fi connection, certain games can be played over the Internet with users of a different region game. Some Wi-Fi-enabled games, for example Mario Kart DS, allow the selection of opponents by region. The options are regional, continent in Europe, and worldwide, as well as 2 non-location specific settings. This allows the player to limit competitors to only those opponents based in the same geographical area. This is based on the region code of the game in use. The Nintendo DSi, however, has a region lock for the DSiWare downloadable games, as well as DSi-specific cartridges. It still runs normal DS games of any region, however.
Media specifications.
Nintendo DS games use a proprietary solid-state mask ROM in their game cards. The mask ROM chips are manufactured by Micronix and have an access time of 150 nanoseconds. Cards currently range from 8 to 512 MB, 64 MB to 4 GB, in size, although data on the maximum capacity has not been released. Larger cards have a 25% slower data transfer rate than more common smaller cards. The cards usually have a small amount of flash memory or an EEPROM to save user data such as game progress or high scores. However, there are few games that have no saved memory such as Electroplankton. The game cards are 35x33x 3.8 mm, 1.38x 1.30x 0.15 in, about half the width and depth of Game Boy Advance cartridges, and weigh around 3.5 g, 1/8 ounce.
Hardware.
The Nintendo DS design resembles that of the multi-screen games from the Game & Watch line, such as Donkey Kong and Zelda, which was also made by Nintendo. The lower display of the Nintendo DS is overlaid with a touch screen designed to accept input from the included stylus, the user's fingers, or a curved plastic tab attached to the optional wrist strap. The touch screen allows users to interact with in-game elements more directly than by pressing buttons. For example, in the included chatting software, PictoChat, the stylus is used to write messages or to draw. The handheld features 4-lettered buttons, X, Y, A, B, a directional pad, and Start, Select, and Power buttons. On the top of the device are 2 shoulder buttons, a game card slot, a stylus holder and a power cable input. The bottom features the Game Boy Advance game card slot. The overall button layout resembles that of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System controller. When using backward compatibility mode on the DS, buttons X and Y in the touchscreen are not used as the Game Boy Advance line of systems do not feature these controls. It also has stereo speakers providing virtual surround sound, depending on the software, located on either side of the upper display screen. This is a first for a Nintendo handheld, as the Game Boy line of systems has only supported stereo sound through the use of headphones or external speakers. A built-in microphone is located below the left side of the bottom screen. It has been used for a variety of purposes, including speech recognition, chatting online between and during gameplay sessions, and minigames that require the player to blow or shout into the microphone.
Models.
The Nintendo DS Lite, Nintendo DS Lite, Nintendo DSu Rito, is the first redesign of the Nintendo DS. While retaining the original model's basic characteristics, it features a sleeker appearance, and brighter screens. Nintendo considered a larger model of the Nintendo DS Lite for release, but decided against it as sales of the original redesign were still strong. As of December 31, 2013, Shipments of the DS Lite have reached 93.86 million units worldwide, according to Nintendo. The Nintendo DSi, Nintendo DSi, Nintendo DSi, is the second redesign of the Nintendo DS. It is based on the unreleased larger Nintendo DS Lite model. While similar to the previous DS redesign, new features include two inner and outer 0.3 megapixel digital cameras, a larger 3.25-inch display, internal and external content storage, compatibility with WPA wireless encryption, and connectivity to the Nintendo DSi shop. Backwards compatibility with Game Boy Advance games was removed. The Nintendo DSi XL, XL in Japan, is a larger design of the Nintendo DSi, and the first model of the Nintendo DS family of consoles to be a size variation of a previous one. It features larger screens with wider view angles, improved battery life, and a greater overall size than the original DSi. While the original DSi was specifically designed for individual use, Nintendo President Satoru Iwata suggested that DSi XL buyers give the console a steady place on a table in the living room, so that it might be shared by multiple household members.
Technical specifications.
The system's 3D hardware performs transform and lighting, texture coordinate transformation, texture mapping, alpha blending, cell shading, and Z buffering. However, it uses point, nearest neighbor, texture filtering, leading to some titles having a blocky appearance. Unlike most 3D hardware, it has a set limit on the number of triangles it can render as part of a single scene. The maximum amount is about 6144 vertices, or 2048 triangles per frame. The 3D hardware is designed to render to a single screen at a time, so rendering 3D to both screens is difficult and decreases performance significantly. The DS is generally more limited by its polygon budget than by its pixel fill rate. There are also 512 kilobytes of texture memory, and the maximum texture size is 1024 x 1024 pixels. The system has 656 kilobytes of video memory and two 2D engines, one per screen. These are similar to, but more powerful than, the Game Boy Advance's single 2D engine. However, the cores are divided into the main core and subcore. Only the main core is capable of vertex 3D rendering. The Nintendo DS has compatibility with Wi-Fi, IEEE 802.11, Legacy Mode. Wi-Fi is used for accessing the Nintendo Wi-Fi connection, compete with other users playing the same Wi-Fi compatible game, PictoChat, or with a special cartridge and RAM extension, browse the Internet. Nintendo claims the battery lasts a maximum of 10 hours under ideal conditions on a full 4-hour charge. Battery life is affected by multiple factors including speaker volume, use of one or both screens, use of wireless connectivity, and use of backlight, which can be turned on or off in selected games such as Super Mario 64 DS. The battery is user replaceable using only a Phillips head screwdriver. After about 500 charges the battery life starts dropping. Users can close the Nintendo DS system to trigger its sleep mode, which pauses the game that is being played and saves battery life by turning off the screens, speakers, the wireless communications. However, closing the system while playing a Game Boy Advance game will not put the Nintendo DS into sleep mode, and the game will continue to run normally. Certain DS games, such as Animal Crossing, Wild World, also will not pause, but the backlight, screens, and speakers will turn off. Additionally, when saving the game in certain games, the DS will not go into sleep mode.
Accessories.
Although the secondary port on the Nintendo DS does accept and support Game Boy Advance cartridges, but not Game Boy or Game Boy Color cartridges, Nintendo has emphasized that its main intention for its inclusion was to allow a wide variety of accessories to be released for the system, the Game Boy Advance compatibility titles being a logical extension. Due to the lack of a second port on the Nintendo DSi, it is not compatible with any accessory that uses it.
Rumble Pack.
The Rumble Pack was the first official expansion slot accessory. In the form of a Game Boy Advance cartridge, the rumble pack vibrates to reflect the action in compatible games, such as when the player bumps into an obstacle or loses a life. It was released in North America and Japan in 2005 bundled with Metroid Prime Pinball. In Europe, it was first available with the game Action Loop, and later Metroid Prime Pinball. The rumble pack was also released separately in those regions.
Headset.
The Nintendo DS headset is the official headset for the Nintendo DS. It plugs into the headset port, which is a combination of a standard 3.5mm, 1/8 inch, headphone connector and a proprietary microphone connector, on the bottom of the system. It features one earphone and a microphone, and is compatible with all games that use the internal microphone. It was released alongside Pokémon Diamond and Pearl in Japan, North America, and Australia.
Browser.
On February 15, 2006, Nintendo announced a version of the cross-platform web browser Opera for the DS system. The browser can use one screen as an overview, a zoomed portion of which appears on the other screen, or both screens together to present a single tall view of the page. The browser went on sale in Japan and Europe in 2006, and in North America on June 4, 2007. Browser operation requires that an included memory expansion pack is inserted into the GBA slot. The DSi has an internet browser available for download from the Nintendo DSi shop for free.
Wi-Fi USB Connector.
This USB flash disk-sized accessory plugs into a PC's USB port and creates a miniature hotspot wireless access point, allowing a Wii and up to 5 Nintendo DS units to access the Nintendo Wi-Fi connection service through the host computer's internet connection. When tried under Linux, it acts as a regular wireless adapter, connecting to wireless networks, and LED blinks when there is data being transferred. There is also a hack driver for Windows XP Vista to make it function the same way. The Wi-Fi USB connector has been discontinued from retail stores.
MP3 Player.
The Nintendo MP3 Player, a modified version of the device known as the Player in Japan, was released on December 8, 2006 by Nintendo of Europe at a retail price of PS $29.99/EU30. The add-on uses removable SD cards to store MP3 audio files, and can be used in any device that features support for Game Boy Advance cartridges. However, due to this, it is limited in terms of its user interface and functionality, as it does not support using both screens of the DS simultaneously, nor does it make use of its touchscreen capability. It is not compatible with the DSi, due to the lack of the GBA slot, but the DSi includes a music player via SD card. Although it stated on the box that it is only compatible with a Game Boy Micro, Nintendo DS and Nintendo DS Lite, it is also compatible with a Game Boy Advance SP and Game Boy Advance.
Guitar Grip Controller.
The Guitar Grip Controller comes packaged with the game Guitar Hero, on tour and is plugged into the GBA game slot. It features 4 colored buttons just like the ones that can be found on regular Guitar Hero guitar controllers for the stationary consoles, though it lacks the 5th orange button found on the guitar controllers. The DS Guitar Hero controller comes with a small pick stylus, which is shaped like a guitar pick, as the name suggests, that can be put away into a small slot on the controller. It also features a hand strap. The game works with both the DS Lite and the original Nintendo DS as it comes with an adapter for the original DS. It is not compatible with the DSi or 3DS, due to the lack of GBA slot. The Guitar Grip also works with its sequels, Guitar Hero on Tour, Decades, Guitar Hero on Tour, Modern Hits, and Band Hero.
Software and features. Nintendo Wi-Fi connection.
The Nintendo Wi-Fi connection is a free online game service run by Nintendo. Players with a compatible Nintendo DS game can connect to the service via a Wi-Fi network using a Nintendo Wi-Fi USB connector or a wireless router. The service was launched in North America on November 14, 2005 with the release of Mario Kart DS. Various online games and a web browser are now available.
Download Play.
With Download Play, it is possible for users to play multiplayer games with other Nintendo DS systems using only one game card. Players must have their systems within wireless range, up to approximately 65 feet, of each other for the guest system to download the necessary data from the host system. Download Play is also utilized to migrate Pokémon from 4th generation games into the 5th generation Pokémon Black and White, an example of a task requiring 2 different game cards, 2 handheld units, but only 1 player. Some Nintendo DS retailers feature DS download stations that allow users to download demos of upcoming and currently available DS games. However, due to memory limitations, the downloads are erased once the system is powered off. The download station is made up of 1 to 8 standard retail DS units, with a standard DS card containing the demo data. On May 7, 2008, Nintendo released the Nintendo Channel for download on the Wii. The Nintendo Channel uses Nintendo's Wii Connect 24 to download Nintendo DS demos through the Nintendo Channel. From there, a user can select the game demo he/she wishes to play and, similar to the Nintendo DS download stations at retail outlets, download the demo, until the user turns off the console, to their DS 4MB RAM. In collaboration with fast food restaurant chain McDonald's, a service called Nintendo Zone will start in the Kanto, Shukyo and Kansai regions of Japan. It is an extension of the DS download station that offers exclusive content to each area and demos of upcoming and currently available DS games. The DSi has the necessary software built in to detect and use these zones, while previous versions require downloading the Nintendo Zone Viewer.
MultiCard Play.
MultiCard Play, like Download Play, allows users to play multiplayer games with other Nintendo DS systems. In this case, each system requires a game card. This mode is accessed from an in-game menu, rather than the normal DS menu.
PictoChat.
PictoChat allows users to communicate with other Nintendo DS users within local wireless range. Users can enter text, via a small on-screen keyboard, handwrite messages or draw pictures, via the stylus and touch screen. There are 4 chat rooms, A, B, C, D, in which people can go to chat. Up to 16 people can connect in any one room. On Nintendo DS and Nintendo DS Lite systems, users can only write messages in black. However, the DSi and DSi XL includes a new function, letting users write in either black or rainbow-colored pen.
Firmware.
Nintendo's own firmware boots the system. A health and safety warning is displayed first, then the main menu is loaded. The main menu presents the player with 4 main options to select: play a DS game, use PictoChat, initiate DS download play, or play a Game Boy Advance game. The main menu also has some secondary options such as date and time, GBA screen, and touch screen calibration. The firmware also features an alarm clock, several options for customization, such as boot priority for when games are inserted and GBA screen preference, and the ability to input user information and preferences, such as name, birthday, favorite color, etc. that can be used in games.
Hacking and homebrew.
Since the release of the Nintendo DS, a great deal of hacking has occurred involving the DS's fully rewritable firmware, Wi-Fi connection, game cards that allow SD storage, and software use. There are now many emulators for the DS such as NES, SNES, Sega Master System, Sega Mega Drive, Neo Geo Pocket, Neo Geo MVS, Arcade, as well as older handheld consoles like the Game Boy Color. There are a number of cards which either have built-in flash memory, or a slot which can accept an SD, or micro SD, like the DSTT, R4 and is Flash VVI cards. These cards typically enable DS console gamers to use their console to play MP3s and videos, and other non-gaming functions traditionally reserved for separate devices. In South Korea, many video game consumers exploit illegal copies of video games, including for the Nintendo DS. In 2007, 500,000 copies of DS games were sold, while the sales of the DS hardware units was 800,000. Another modification device called Action Replay, manufactured by the company Datel, is a device which allows the user to input cheat codes that allows it to hack games, granting the player infinite health, power-ups, access to any part of the game, etc.